No one is immune from cybersecurity attacks, it seems. Just days ago, several senior Microsoft executives fell victim to a password spray attack coming from Russia. Did the company downplay how serious this was, and did it fail to use some basic best practices? We get analysis now from Stanford University cyber analyst and former White House senior director for cyber policy, A.J. Grotto. Mr. Grotto, good to have you with us.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
And just review what happened here. What is a spray, a tactic, and what happened to the Microsoft execs?
A password spray attack is when a threat adversary tries the same password across many accounts. So it's an attempt to guess a password. In this case, they guessed right and were able to break into this legacy non-production test tenant account, which is essentially a test environment. And we're then able to use that account to get access to email accounts that belonged to senior executives and employees working in Microsoft's security and legal teams.
And what kind of a password would you need to be immune from a spray attack? Because if you use those generated, suggested passwords, a lot of programs have, they're 15 characters, totally random.
Yeah, this probably wasn't a very complex password. The other factor here is there was no multi-factor authentication. Using that sort of second means of logging in, the text message or the authentication app, which is a security no-no these days.
But a simple password can be found by a spray attack. What types of passwords can it find? Like where you go around the perimeter of the keyboard or your name and birthday, that kind of thing?
That kind of stuff, yeah. Password 1, admin 1. Not very complex passwords. Passwords that have, known words in them, English words. It's another no-no. And a complex password probably would have gone a long way towards preventing this from happening.
Right. So these are programs that generate these types of things. Are they context-based? That is, okay, this is Microsoft. We know the person's name, and from public records, you can get birthdays and stuff. Could it be that they designed the passwords for this particular spray attack iteration?
It's possible. We don't know. There's still details about the attack that Microsoft hasn't released yet, and I suspect we'll learn more in the coming weeks as details begin to emerge about what happened and, frankly, what other companies, what other victims may have been affected by the same threat actor.
You have looked at this in some detail, and we know we can attribute the source of the attack too, correct?
Yeah, this was a Russian intelligence. To be clear, Microsoft was a victim here. That said, this attack was like parking your car in a rough neighborhood, leaving your door unlocked and your valuables in plain sight. This kind of episode should not happen, especially for a company that touts its security bona fides the way that Microsoft does.
Right. I was going to say, what are the learnings here? Because a lot of companies are probably looking at this and saying, well, how are my passwords?
Well, one learning is use complex passwords. The other is use multi-factor authentication. And this is the latest in a string of security problems at Microsoft. In 2021, 30,000 organizations' email servers were hacked due to a Microsoft Exchange server flaw. Last year, Chinese hackers breached U.S. government emails via a Microsoft cloud exploit. 3 years ago, it was at the center of the SolarWinds attack, which was actually carried out by the same threat actor that got Microsoft in this recent episode.
And now you have the federal government, in some cases in large numbers of people, are using, and lots of agencies are using Microsoft 365 Cloud for the basic collaboration tools, Office, if you will, that everyone has. And therefore, they're not in your own, all of the data and all of the applications are not in the federal servers anymore. They're in Microsoft servers. How should agencies think about this?
Microsoft has something like 85% of the market for the federal government's productivity software, which is to say it has a stranglehold on that market.
Well, the government bought it by choice, we should say.
Yeah, no, I mean, and although, I would argue that the government's also locked in, right? Because Microsoft makes it difficult to switch. There are switching costs that make it not a straightforward proposition to shift to a new vendor the way you might, sell a car and buy a new car. So I'm still a big believer in cloud. There are security benefits, there are cost benefits, there are efficiency benefits, and so the answer here is not for organizations, federal government or otherwise, to move away from the cloud. It's to support more competition in the marketplace for cloud services. so that customers can vote with their dollars and switch providers if they're not happy with the service they're getting from their incumbent provider.
We're speaking with A.J. Grotto. He's Senior Director of the Program on Geopolitics, Technology, and Governance at Stanford University and a former White House Senior Director for Cyber Policy. And getting back to the cyber question here with Microsoft, when you have cloud-hosted type of thing like this, each one of your people has an account with their name on it and a password. And if the agency chooses to have multi-factor, then that's what they have. Are these like bathrooms in small houses where there might be a door on either end, and therefore there's a back door through Microsoft into clients' accounts just as much as there is a front door through the client?
Well, these security problems at Microsoft's corporate headquarters do speak to a risk there. I mentioned the SolarWinds attack from 3 years ago. Microsoft products were at the center of that attack, and also Microsoft itself was compromised by the Russian threat actor. We have a similar situation here where a Russian threat actor has been able to get inside of Microsoft systems. In this case, the running theory is that the threat actor was looking to understand what Microsoft understood about Microsoft's own research into this particular threat actor. And the fact that the adversary was able to get that kind of access is worrisome. It's because there's more to the story here than I think just the password spray attack. The fact that the adversary was able to get access to email accounts that belong to senior executives, I'm not sure how that's possible unless this particular test account, unless the system that the threat actors compromised had administrator privileges that allowed it to grant access. That's also a big no-no. There's a basic security principle called the least privilege principle. And basically it means you give a system access to only the information and resources it needs to fulfill its purpose. Giving this account administrator privileges would seem to violate the least privilege principle.
Right. And a smart executive, say, in finance probably would say, don't give me access. Make sure my account can't get to certain places, because that's how you have deniability and safety.
Right. What we've learned so far from public disclosures by Microsoft is there are at least two problems here. You've got the password problems, as well as this second question of how the adversary was then able to swim around Microsoft's networks and gain access to these executives' emails.
Right. So my question then is, if whether through phishing or through a password spray, a hacker can get the corporate account information of the cloud supplier, can it also use that means to get to the information of the clients of the cloud?
It's possible. Cloud companies obviously, have a really strong incentive to prevent that from happening. But I think, we see these incidents going after, call it the Fort Knox of cloud, Microsoft. If you can break into Fort Knox, you've all of a sudden got access to all the riches that are stored inside. And so that is a major concern. And I think Microsoft has some explaining to do still.
I suppose if you could get into a test environment or a development environment, you could do things to the products under development and under test also, probably.
Yeah, you could. There was actually another vulnerability announced about a development environment in Microsoft Azure that had a flaw that would allow adversaries to mess with code. If organizations had updated their software, they wouldn't be exposed to this particular threat. But again, it speaks to the continued risk that poor security practices can pose to organizations.
And should Google and Amazon and their cloud operations fold their hands in satisfaction here or not?
Well, no. I mean, look, to me, as I come back to the competition point, what we need is more competition. And that means that Amazon and Google ought to beat Microsoft on security. These episodes point to a real vulnerability in Microsoft when it comes to security.
A.J. Grotto is Senior Director of the Program on Geopolitics, Technology, and Governance at Stanford University, and also former White House Senior Director for Cyber Policy. Thanks so much for joining me.
It's been great to be here. Thank you, Tom.
And we'll post this interview at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive. Subscribe to the Federal Drive wherever you get your podcasts.